Okay, I am going to begin working on the uppers, tooth number 3 and 4. I'm not going to use my cheeks just because for demonstration purposes, and so I'm just showing you right there. So for this area, we are going to be sitting at the 9 o'clock position. This is surfaces towards me, and the patient's chin is going to be up, and the maxillary occlusal plane is perpendicular to the floor. The patient's head is slightly away from me. And then I will begin with the explore. I will first locate the correct working end, and basically it's making sure the terminal shank is up and over the occlusal plane. So let's see here. That is the incorrect working end. And then, so it does take me a while to kind of just get adjusted. I'm just placing my fingers, try to get my modified pen grasp all together. I won't be really using the mirror, so just for demonstration purposes. So yeah, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and then again, it does take me a bit to just kind of get into place with my instrument, so bear with me. Okay, and then just in a moment I'm going to show you like where I place my instrument between the second and third knuckles, and then my modified pen grasp. So that's how I know I'm in a good position. My fulcrum, my ring finger is gonna sit maybe about 3 teeth away from the working tooth. I'll begin working on tooth number 3, distal line angle of the tooth, elbow in, elbow out, rotate, elbow in, pivot, rotate the instrument, and then, okay, once I'm done with the vertical strokes on that distal, I'm going to flip my instrument halfway and work towards the mesial. I purposely like to see first with my instrument where I end up, so I'll do that really fast. Place the instrument all around the mesial. I'll begin with elbow in, elbow out, elbow in, elbow out. Once I get to the mesial line angle, I'm going to obviously pivot and roll, and then walk my instrument into the contact, and then do my vertical strokes do my vertical strokes at the contact with the wrist activation. There we go. So I'm working on distal of tooth number 4. Definitely started finger pulling right there, so something I do need to work on. And also my wrist activation, you're going to see in a moment, it just looks horrible. But here we go. Elbow in, elbow out, in and out, pivot and roll. Then right here, it's just, yeah, it needs a lot of help. Okay, next I'm going to be exploring the linguals of tooth number 3 and 4. Again, this patient is chin is up, and the occlusal plane is perpendicular to the floor. This is surfaces away from the clinician, so I'll be sitting at the 10 to 11 o'clock position. And I'm going to find the correct working end, and then I'm going to use the mirror really fast just to see where my placement is at, but I will not be using it just for demonstration purposes. Again, though, you definitely want to use the mirror going towards the distals at any time. So I'll be placing my modified my fulcrum onto the tooth. I'm definitely close to the working tooth. You probably want to be another 2 teeth away, so I'm not sure why I did that. So I began at the distal line angle of the tooth, and I start walking it in right away into the distal contact, just because it's a short bit right there. Then I'll rotate my instrument halfways, and I will begin at the distal line angle of the tooth. I was just showing you with my thumb my placement. That's how I know I'm standing tall and I'm in good position to begin. At the mesial line angle, I'm rotating and pivoting and walking into the contact. And I noticed here I was splitting. I think, again, it was my fulcrum was too close to the working tooth. So I'll try that again. Here we go. Side, side, or I should say up and down. Mesial line angle, pivot and roll, and then I start walking into that tooth, into that contact, and then vertical strokes. Then I will begin with tooth number 4 at the distal line angle. Again, I'm using my mouth mirror just to see where it's located, and I'll take it out of the frame in just a sec. And then I'm not sure why my fulcrum is so close to that tooth, the working tooth, but definitely you want to teeth away. And then, vertical strokes, and then I'll be working towards that mesial. I definitely struggle with the premolars. Not sure why. Any advice, please leave me a comment. Here I go. Pivot and roll into that contact because it's just a small tooth. Okay, now I'll be working on the uppers on the buckles of tooth number 3 and 4. With the UC, I'll begin by finding the correct working end. The terminal shank should be up parallel to the distal surface of the tooth. The face of the blade, the primary blade, should be facing towards the buckles versus the incorrect end. The face is pointing up, and that's how I know it's the incorrect working end. Okay, so I'll begin. And for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to be using the mouth mirror because I feel like it's going to block the view. But definitely want to use your mouth mirror when working on the distals. And I'm establishing my modified pen grasp. I have more of a firm grip versus my Explorer. I'm just showing you there. And then I'll begin by placing my instrument at the distal line angle of the tooth. And I just like to position it in first, insert it, and then open the face towards the distal. Open the face, but at the same time, I'm going to be working with the secondary blade. And then I am going to go in, and once I get to the interproximals, up and down, vertical strokes, flip my instrument, use a primary blade, and then open the toe just a tad bit, and I'll begin in elbow out, elbow in. Once I reach the mesial line angle of the tooth, I'm going to pivot and roll, and then walk into the contact. And then once I get into the contact, it's wrist activation. Again, I just have such a hard time with the wrist activation for the uppers, it seems like. So again, I will begin working with the distal contact of the tooth, using the secondary blade only for the distals. Okay, and then once I get to the mesials, I flip my instrument, or mesial, and then I'm using a primary blade and open up the instrument a little bit and just using the toe of the instrument. There we go. And then once I get into that mesial line angle, pivot and roll and walk into the contact. Okay, so then I'll be using my UC instrument on the linguals for tooth number 3 and 4. I definitely struggled with the linguals just, you'll see. So I'll be starting at the distal line angle of tooth number 3. I will be using the secondary blade, and I will insert, and then I will adapt the toe. I'll slightly open the face of the instrument and then begin kind of like a side-to-side motion. And then once I get to the interproximals, vertical strokes, and then I'll flip my instrument halfway, and then I will insert my instrument at the distal line angle, and then I will open the face and use my primary blade towards the mesial. And then once I get into that mesial line angle, I will begin to pivot and roll, and then walk into the contact. And then vertical strokes up and down. And same thing for tooth number 4. There we go. I'm trying to stand tall, but I seem to drop my instrument a lot, actually. Again, premolars are just not my... It's just hard for me. And I'm using my secondary blade on the distals. And I can see I'm not really standing up tall. The terminal shank is not parallel to the tooth, so definitely to work on that. And then going towards the mesial, I'm using the primary blade once again. Pivoting and rolling at that mesial line angle, and then walk into the contacts. And that was a horrible demonstration of the wrist activation. But okay, so moving on to the perio probe. I'll be sitting at 8 o'clock actually on the upper right side. Again, though, the patient's chin is going to be up, and I'll begin starting high towards the distal. Okay, so once I get into the distal contact, I will slightly rotate my instrument and get my reading, then walk towards the mesial, and then in the central of the tooth, I will get my final reading a little after. And then once I get into the mesial line angle, I'm going to pivot and roll, and basically at that point my instrument should be already dropped. So again, once I start walking towards the mesial and the central of the tooth, I will begin to drop my instrument, and then at the mesial line angle I will start pivoting into the contact and rotate my instrument and get my reading, my last reading. And then I will begin again starting high on tooth number 3. I will place my fulcrum about 2 or 3 teeth away from the working tooth, and then I'll begin at the distal line angle, and I'll walk towards the distal, rotate my instrument slightly and get my distal reading, and then walk towards the mesial. And once I'm in the central, I'm going to start dropping my instrument and get my reading basically at the mesial line angle. And then once I get to that mesial contact, rotate in and get my mesial reading. So basically at the central of the tooth, I should still be high with my instrument, and then once I pass that, I should start dropping, and then right there I should be getting my buccal or lingual reading, just FYI. Then I will begin with exploring tooth number 7 and 8, using my modified pen grasp, finding the correct working end. And just a reminder, I'll be sitting at the 8 to 9 clock position when I'm working towards surfaces towards me. So I will begin by exploring tooth number 8 towards the mesial, and pivot and roll once I get into that contact. With the anterior teeth, I'm pivoting and rolling sooner. and then making sure my wrist is neutral. I believe right here I turn a little too fast, and actually I'm just exploring a little too fast right here. So then I will be working on the linguals, again, surfaces towards me. And I apologize, this view is horrible. But yeah, so I'll begin placing my instrument at the midline of the tooth, and then once I get near that contact, I will rotate, pivot, and roll into it, and then up and down with vertical strokes. And then I'm going to move my typodont a little away from me, so the tooth is more central towards me, or central into my view. Oh, that's a little better. And again, I'm making sure my wrist is neutral. My palm is cuffed on the lower anteriors as well. Okay, so next I'll begin with working on surfaces away from me, tooth number 7 and 8, and I'm going to find the correct working end, and then I will begin with tooth number 7 and place my instrument right at the midline, and then I will begin exploring by side to side motions, pivot and roll, pivot and roll, pivot and roll, and then up and down. Again, I will be sitting at the 11 to 1 o'clock position. Patient's chin is up and neutral to turn right or left. All right, so tooth number 8, side to side, side to side. Wow, I'm going really slow, which I should have been going really slow toward surfaces towards me. So yeah, that just shows I need to practice more. So I will be working on the linguals, again, surfaces away from me. I'll be starting on tooth number 7. Remember that imaginary line going down the tooth. That's where I'll place my tip. And then I'll begin to side, side to side, side to side, side to side. Once I get into that proximal, up and down, and then out. And then tooth number 8. Wow, these views are horrible. Again, I apologize. Side to side, side to side, side to side, up and down, up and down. Okay, so next I'll be using the UC. I'm working with surfaces away from me, and I'm just trying to find the correct working end. Again, we're going to be using the primary blade, so that face of the blade is going to be towards the facials. I'm just showing here the incorrect working end. And then, so I'll begin by placing my modified pen grass, and then inserting the tip, and then slowly opening my blade, and then using the toe of the tip, and then walk up. And then going side to side, and then once I get to that interproximal, going up and down. Again, imagine that little midline down the tooth, side to side, side to side, side to side, then vertical strokes. Then I'm gonna be using my UC on the linguals, and again, I'm going to use the correct working end. I'm going to place, insert my tip, adapt it to the tooth, and then slightly open the blade, and then just use the toe of the instrument. So I'm going to go side to side, side to side, side to side, side to side, up and down, and then out. Then same thing on tooth number 8. Again, I just can't keep saying this enough times, but these views are horrible. But just know I'm going side to side, and then up and down into the interproximals. And then next I will begin by probing. So let's see here. I'm going to start high and then I'll end low. So I will begin at the distal of the tooth and I will get my reading there, rotate my instrument slightly into the coal, and then walk my way to the central of the tooth. And once I pass the central, my instrument's going to slightly, I'm going to drop my instrument here, and then I'm going to read my probe reading for the buccal or facials. And then once I walk into the mesial, slightly rotate that in. My handle is down. Same thing, get my reading on the distal, slightly rotate the instrument in, then walk, drop the instrument, get my reading there, walk into the mesial, get my reading once I slightly rotate my instrument in, and then I'm going to do the linguals, and again, I'm starting high and I'm ending low. And pretty much I'm going to be sitting at the 12 o'clock position for my probe readings. So let's see here. I'm ending low. Once I get into that mesial contact, slightly rotate to get my mesial reading. Okay, then I'm going to probe tooth number 7, starting high to low. Ending at that mesial, slightly rotating into the contact and getting my mesial reading.